everyone. So this might be a little different kind of video than normally you would see from me, as you can probably tell by what you're looking at here. But I have to share it. I'll give you a little background on this. When I was about, I don't know, 13 or 14, gosh, 40 some years ago at least, I had a sand scorcher, Tamiya Sand Scorcher. I saw they come out in, they came out in 1979, and this is probably 82, 83, somewhere around that time frame. And I saw articles on them, including in Hot VW's magazine and a bunch of different sources, and I just lost my mind as a kid that age. I was already into building models at that time, and this was just like a whole nother level. And never seen an RC car like that before. So I don't really know how it happened, but my parents were able to get me one. And so I put that together, and over the years, you know, at that time, did several modifications to it, painted it a couple times, just really loved the thing. It was my introduction to RC. I went and raced it a couple times. Ascot Park in Gardena had a RC track alongside the big oval there, and just really had a blast with it. And as I got older, I lost some of the parts. I actually lost the body, didn't have the radio. And then I'd say maybe about 20 years ago, I actually ended up selling what I had left, which was the chassis. But I had done a lot of upgrades to that thing. I had centerline aluminum wheels on it, replaced the bushings with bearings, I had coilover shocks on it, just all kinds of stuff. But anyway, I really regretted selling it. I always kind of thought, you know, maybe I'd fix it up. eBay was coming around and you could get parts for these things, but I ended up using eBay just to sell what I had, because that's what I needed to do at the time. But then in 2010, Tamiya did a re-release, and I saw it in the hobby shops when I was already into model building at that time. I got back into model building, and man, I was already just salivating over it, but I didn't act fast enough. They all sold out. They got really expensive, and that was that. So then, just recently, they reissued the reissue. And so I told my wife, my wonderful wife, Lisa, and she made it happen for Christmas. So I'm just so excited. Get to kind of relive my childhood again, have another project. I probably won't get to building it for a little while yet, but just the ideas are already flowing on what I want to do with this. So, but anyway, I wanted to unbox it here. It's still in the plastic after Christmas. We're just a couple days after Christmas here as I speak. And I want to take a look at what's inside and have you come along a ride with me. I think a lot of things have changed in some ways. Back then we had NiCad batteries. The radios had crystals to change the frequency and that sort of thing. And I think all that's different now, but I don't really know a whole lot about it. So that's going to be part of my learning curve, which is part of the fun. So anyway, the original box art looks pretty much the same here on the cover. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a box art paint job to start with. And I may end up getting some other box bodies and painting them, do some custom painting and that sort of thing, and just have some fun with it. I know I want to upgrade the wheels and tires here and there, and I'll probably have set so I could always put it back to the box art configuration if I want to. At least that's what I have in mind right now, so we'll see. Anyway, let's take a look and see what's inside this bad boy. This is just one of the greatest things, you know, when you see this thing all packaged up. It just, man, it just looks like fun, you know. I just can't wait to tear into it and start building. Like I said, it's going to be a little while. So this looks like the speed controller, which I don't really understand exactly how they work just yet. That's something I'll have to get up to speed on. My assumption is it probably just plugs right into the receiver somehow. There's no servo. Back in the day, we had a servo that turned some type of a, I don't know, potentiometer or something. I'm not sure exactly how that worked either, but it was a mechanical device, very mechanical, and this one is electronic. So we'll have to learn about that stuff. Let's start over here on the left. We got the suspension pieces. There's our spindles. The well nuts here, those are exactly the same as they used to be. They would be for the radial box. And basically, when you tighten it up, it squishes and uses pressure to hold the box on. Now, back when I had my Sand Scorcher, the original box really didn't last that long on my car. I ended up taking it out and getting one that was a Lexan. And I'm not sure it was better, but the original boxes tend to crack when you crashed and that sort of thing, and I didn't have that problem with the Lexan one. All right, so then we got the uprights here, a couple gears for our ratios. Now this is new. They've got ball bearings in here, which is awesome because the old Sand Scorcher had brass bushings, and that was one of the first things that started wearing out. Especially in your A-arms here, the bushings would wear out, the axles would get loose. The axles would actually get really worn right here, and you had to replace those as well as the bushings if you wanted to get it back up to speed. But with the ball bearings, you don't have that problem. The axles don't wear out like they used to. So let's see what else we got. Everything else looks pretty much like it was back in the day. Another thing I don't really know much about are the motors. They've since gotten into brushless motors and all kinds of stuff, and I'm really not familiar with that technology at all. So we'll have to learn about that as we go, but that's half the fun. We got the front suspension arms here, the trailing arms. These are the pieces that hold on the rear hoop and the rear bumper together. And so that's all pretty much looks like was back in the day. Let's take a look over here on the right side. We got the tires, which are pretty much look like the same mold as they were back in the day in terms of, you know, the riding and what style tire they are, which is really cool because that captures the look. But one thing I noticed, the universal joints, that was another thing back in the day that was in brass, and they would wear out and you'd have to get new ones. That was a bummer. So I had replaced my universal joints on the original one with steel, but it looks like they've done that for us, so we don't have to do that again. Here's the gearbox. Everything looks the same there. Pretty cool. So let's take a dive under here and see what's in here. All right, well, on this side, looks like we got us some stickers. They're not water slide decals, which I would expect. They're stickers like they were back in the day. And it looks like, and I knew this had happened, but they changed some of the writing on some of these decals and stickers here because they probably didn't have licensing. Like this is obviously a Pennzoil logo. I'm not sure what some of these were back in the day, but I do know you can get aftermarket replacements for these that have, you know, the actual companies and things that were on there originally. So I'll probably end up getting a couple sets of those. And I'm not sure if there's anything under here. In fact, I'm going to come back to that because I think there's a lot of parts stored in there from what I've seen. Let's take a look back on this side. All right, I'm going to set that aside. And yeah, here we got some of the styrene components. We've got the front end and the exhaust here, which is pretty cool. And we got the driver. And I think that's one thing I didn't do back in the day. I didn't put the driver together and I didn't have him in the car, but kind of looking forward to doing that. You know, since I've been in scale modeling, one of the things that I've always wanted to try to do is do figures. And this might be a great face to practice on. It's 10th scale, so it's a little bit bigger than what I'm used to dealing with in the modeling side, where it's like 1/24th, 1/25th, etc. So there might be a lot to work with where I can kind of practice on that and make something pretty cool looking. Another enhancement I saw on YouTube that I really want to try is a guy made the head of the driver turn with the car. When he turned right, the head would turn to the right. When he turned left, the head would turn to the left. He had some kind of a micro server installed underneath there. Micro servo, I should say. So I'm looking forward to trying that. Definitely not one of the first things I'm going to do, but down the road, that'd be kind of fun. And it was all hooked into the LED lighting for the lights and the tail lights. Obviously, you'd have to replace these lenses here, but But that sounds like a fun project to add down the line once we get this thing built. All right, and here are the wheels. Pretty much what we had back in the day. Again, I'm looking to get some upgraded wheels and tires, so I'll probably order another set of this and get some wheel faces. That's probably the most expensive way to go and still get a really cool look on this thing with some alloy wheels. I've seen a few different styles, and there's some that I like, and we'll give that a shot. Not sure what this is. Haven't seen the directions yet, since you guys are seeing this with me, but it probably has something to do with the radio or inside the radio box somewhere, a little foam cushion. And let's take a look over here. Here's the chrome tree. We got some mirrors. Here's our front flashers, our logo, headlights. All looking pretty standard there. Very cool. And the body. And that's one of the cool things about this, and one of the things I like about it. It's a hard plastic styrene body, just like the models I'm working on today. And so this is an area where I believe that I can work on this and make it really kind of excel and stand out with a level of detail that most of the RC cars don't have. There's a lot of detail in this body. I mean, they've got the molded in door handles, and everything's just really pretty crisp. We've got some mold lines here that will be no trouble to get out. We've got some trim. I see online a lot of guys have a lot of trouble getting the trim to look nice and clean, but I think that's something that I'll be able to do pretty successfully on this thing. Anyway, I love the body. I always liked the Sand Scorcher, even over above some of the other ones that they came out with. They had the Rough Rider at time, which was like a racing buggy, and they had the Ford F-150, which my brother Todd had, and I always liked the Sand Scorcher better, so I'm really happy with that one. And then here's the clear parts tree. We got the windows, the headlights, the tail lights. Okay, so there's clear tail lights. So you must be able to replace, or it fits over what's on there. So you could probably hollow this one out and add this lens, I'm guessing, or do something along those lines. I'll have to research that a little bit and see what other guys have done. But glad to see a clear lens, because that's something we can work with when we get to the LED stuff. Here's the rear bumper. I want to definitely get an aftermarket one made out of aluminum alloy or something. I know on my original, one of the first things that happened was this thing broke right here, and I actually never replaced it. It was just broken all the time. I tried to glue it, but it's almost impossible to really get a good adhesion on this thing. This part isn't styrene. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it's PVC or something. But it definitely want to replace that down the road. But this will work for now. It'll look good. And then here is our original radio box. I'm kind of looking forward to sticking with this. I think it's a good looking box. It definitely will keep out some of the water and dirt. The old one that I had, and the aftermarket one, wasn't really good at keeping stuff out of the battery box. It got pretty dirty in there. It definitely wasn't waterproof, which is what this is kind of designed to be. You've got a rubber boot that fits over this to keep the switch dry, and you've got your receiver up here. And one of the things I did back in the day that I see a lot of guys still doing is, instead of having the steering servo over here, they're moving it up front and having a direct servo saver here with the tie rods. And I did that back in the day. It worked out pretty good with mine. And I've seen some guys actually use this box to do that. I had a section up here on the Lexan one. I cut a little hole in it when the servo driver came through, and I'm not sure exactly how to do it with this, but that's something I'm looking forward to doing. The covers for the engine here look pretty much the same, almost exactly the same mold, so no changes there. Really good stuff. Set that back in here. All right. Anyway, really looking forward to that. Getting this thing built up. See if I can fit it back in the box. That's going to be the first test. And let's jump over here and see what's in this box. I believe that there's a lot of screws and all the kinds of stuff in here. So let's go ahead and a knife around here somewhere. Where did I put it? I don't exactly know. Here we go. I'll just do it by brute force. I'm just gonna dump all these parts in the box here so I can put them back in a second. I gotta go through them. All right, lots of goodies here. We got the front bumper, definitely just like the original, except the original one I had was molded in gray plastic. This one's in black. The black probably looks a little nicer, but this is probably going to be one of the first things I think I'm going to replace, just because it doesn't look realistic. You know, the real car obviously doesn't look like this. I had an aftermarket one back in the 80s, but even it wasn't realistic. It was more practical because this one tended to break. We were pretty hard on them back then at 12, 13, 14 years old. But they have some alloy ones that look really cool, look like the box art, so I'm going to try and pursue one of those. Put that back in the box. The antenna, that's something I'm curious about. Like I said, I don't know much about the radio technology. Do you still have the wire coming up for your antenna or not? It seemed like maybe there's radios today that don't require that. And it looks like they gave us maybe a second antenna, or I'm not really sure what that is yet. Have to check that out, see if the instructions enlighten us on that other piece. Let's see, let's go for the chassis here. So I have seen that the chassis is different, at least in color. The old one was fiberglass. This looks like it's probably some type of fiberglass as well, just maybe molded in black this time. And then the strengthening plate right here. And that's all the same. Had that back in the day. We've got 2 tie wraps. Have no idea what that's for. We'll have to figure that out as we go, but cool. Good to see the chassis there. And then here's the rear hoop. The rear bumper goes on this. The rear shocks come up and join right here where the rear bumper attaches. This is just like it used to be. And one cool thing is this thing polishes up really nice. So I'll probably do a little bit of polishing on this thing and clean up on the white metal and see what that looks like. All right, here's some radio box parts. This is the switch cover I was talking about. This is the boot for the steering. So it tries to keep the opening covered where the steering goes in case you're going through some water or something. We've got some double-sided tape here. Maybe that's for the servo and the receiver. I can only assume at this point. Let's see what else. RC parts bag. Various screws, washers. Hey, got a cat messing with me. Jacking up my program here. Anyway, so here's the screws bag. These might be wheel nuts. I'm not sure exactly what those are for. I don't remember having this type of a setup with that kind of a screw before, but we'll be finding out. And then just another screw bag here. I think a lot of these go on the body, connecting pieces there, from what I recall. That's what it kind of reminds me of anyway. And then this is cool. We got some damper fluid. And what is this? Ceramic grease. So that's probably for inside the gearbox. We have anaerobic gel thread lock. All right, so we've got some thread lock, which we used to use a lot of thread lock on this thing back in the day for sure. Now these are the tie rod ends and for the steering. And I know that's something that we replaced. The tie rods on this thing when I was a kid used to get really bent up pretty bad, and these things would wear out on the ball joint and they'd fall off and they wouldn't stick. So we had replaced that with ones that were much sturdier and screwed in instead of just popping on. And so I might have to see what guys are doing about that these days. I'm sure a lot of the aftermarket parts that I used back in the day are probably no longer available. So, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some replacements. There you go with the RC parts bag. B. Got our Allen screws, which we use for probably putting a lot of the gearbox together and the chassis and the front end and everything. And then the ball joints that I was just talking about that we typically would probably want to replace in some areas. So that's cool. And here we go, we got the rear torsion bars. There's the steering rod I recognize there. We got some springs here. I'm not sure exactly what those are for, but we'll be figuring all that out. I'm not sure what that is. I think that's actually this here. I'm not even gonna speculate at this point. It's been just way too many years. We got the body clips here, the front springs. Cool. Now this is an area I'm curious about. Here's the shocks. Now, these are definitely not what we had back in the day. They look like they have a little bit bigger diameter to them. This definitely is machined differently here. Back in the day, I never replaced the shocks, but I did put coilovers over the shocks that we did have, but the shocks just never seemed to actually do anything. And I did see that guys were saying that that the internals on the shocks really aren't that great either, and they would replace these to get a little better damper. So that's something I definitely might be looking into in the future, see what we can do to upgrade the shocks. Here is, these are for the A-arms that hold the spindles on. This is another part that used to wear out when I was a kid, and definitely I had replaced those with one that was more circular with an O-ring that held it on, but man, those things held great. I'm not really sure engineering-wise what was different about them. I know these just pop on, and I thought those did too, but they worked great. I never had a failure once I replaced them. So, but everything I've seen on YouTube or whatever still has these on their kit, so maybe they're sufficient, or maybe they've upgraded the part, I'm not really sure. Or maybe nobody makes a replacement these days. But anyway, that's one area we'll keep an eye out for. Here we got the internal gears. Here's the metal gears for the engine, which you can change the ratio, so that's why we have two. And then these are the actual internal gears inside the gearbox. And these are the clamps for the exhaust pipe. All right, good stuff here. And let's see, I recognize these. I think this is also an internal gear. And then I think this is actually like the, I don't even know what you'd call it, but it goes in the gearbox, the main gear goes here, and then your U-joints would come on this side, on each side of this, as they stick out of the gearbox. We've got the front end tubes, and those are gonna polish up really nice, which I'm probably gonna do. These are the two, top and bottom, and this is the one that goes in the middle that holds the whole assembly together. We've got the body clip here. Awesome stuff. Here's our front body post. And I can tell just by looking at it that this is a little bit thinner than the ones we used to have back in the day. I'm not really sure why, but it's really nicely machined. I mean, it is a beautiful piece just all on its own. There's not like any machining ridges on this thing. It's very smooth. What a nice looking piece of metal there. And then let's see, RC parts bag C. So just some various nuts, and we have our, oh man, having a brain fade here. Just some various nuts and washers and set screws that we'll be using on this thing. And I think that's it for the hardware and the parts. So really, the only thing in the box we haven't looked at yet is the instruction manual. And this is something I'm really looking forward to reading. This is gonna get me up to speed on all the changes and everything. And wow, it's just like back in the day. This was one of the first things, definitely the first RC car I ever built. And I really had a blast building it. And it took a little while, you know, we do it in stages. In fact, I followed the instructions to a T. And, you know, they must be good for a 12, 13-year-old kid to put this thing together and make it run and not have any major issues. That's saying something. I'm really looking forward to doing it again. And so, yeah, I appreciate you guys watching this. I don't know that I'm going to do any more videos on the Sand Scorcher, but you never know. It's certainly possible. Really looking forward to having fun with this thing. can't thank my wife Lisa enough. I mean, it's just like, it's magical, you know. You get a bit nostalgic about these things when you're older, and to be able to relive this again and play with it and have some fun at the same time is really a treat. So thank you, my dear, and thank you guys for watching this, and we'll see you all later.